Residential sales comparison and income approaches. Help. Documents. Email instructor. CH for procedures of the sales comparison approach, partial interests, and real property rights. PG 52 valuation of partial interests. Notes print. Leave a comment. Valuation of partial interests. As we stated before, anytime we have something less than 100% of the fee simple rights, it becomes a partial interest. As you can see, even though many appraisers typically state that most properties are being appraised as fee simple, that is rarely the case. Anytime a property has a mortgage, a lease, or any kind of easement, it is no longer a fee simple interest. Of course, mortgages are usually disregarded in the appraisal of real property. In most cases, it is not the appraiser's responsibility to research mortgages and consider their impact on value. The property is commonly appraised as if there were no mortgages or other liens on the title. Appraising a partial interest becomes more complicated. It may prove to be that the impact of some factor that creates a partial interest is negligible. But we never know until we investigate the circumstances. It is possible that an easement can add to value, reduce value, or have no impact. End of page. Chapter start. 25%.
Generally, when valuing partial interests, we discover that the value of a partial interest is less than the pro rata share of a fee simple interest. For example, the value of a 1/3 interest may be considerably less than 1/3 of the market value of the property. Assume you are to appraise the value of a 1/3 interest in a small chain of 5 pizza parlors. The properties are owned jointly by 3 general partners, and each has a 1/3 interest. A recent appraisal of the market value of all 5 properties has been obtained, and the opinion of value was $3 million. We cannot automatically assume that the value of a 1/3 share is therefore $1 million. The market value of the 1/3 share would presume a typical purchaser who would be knowledgeable of the facts in the situation. Minority ownership interests have limited market appeal. It may be difficult to find a buyer willing to buy into the partnership at all. The buyer might have to come up with all cash. He or she would be in a minority ownership position and would not have control. They would be subjugated to the wishes of the other 2 partners. Therefore, the value of the partial interest might have to be discounted in order to attract a potential purchaser. You can imagine that the value of owning 51% of the shares in a company would be a lot more valuable than owning 49%.
Residential sales comparison and income approaches. Help. Documents. Email instructor. CH for procedures of the sales comparison approach, partial interests, and real property rights. PG 54 valuation of partial interests. Notes print. Leave a comment. Valuation of partial interests. ASPAP Standards Rule 1-4E addresses this issue when it states, when analyzing the assemblage of the various estates or component parts of a property, an appraiser must analyze the effect on value, if any, of the assemblage. An appraiser must refrain from valuing the whole solely by adding together the individual values of the various estates or component parts. Comment, although the value of the whole may be equal to the sum of the separate estates or parts, it also may be greater than or less than the sum of such estates or parts. 2020 to 2021 ASPAP. End of page. Chapter start. 25%. residential sales comparison and income approaches. Help. Documents. Email instructor. CH for procedures of the sales comparison approach, partial interests, and real property rights. PG 55 entering leasehold/fee simple data here. Notes print. Leave a comment. Entering leasehold/fee simple data here. You must record the type of property rights for the subject and all comparables on the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report, URAR. There is a box for this information in the Value Adjustments section, just below the box for location information. For residences, the entry in this box may be fee simple. But if it is not, note the variance and assign an appropriate value to it, based on matched pair data from the market. For example, if comparable one sold for $220,000, but did not include timber rights, you might search for other comparables with timber rights and compare prices. Comparable 2 was nearly identical to 1 and included timber rights. It sold for $250,000. It would be reasonable to assume that timber rights were worth $30,000. Note this information as follows. You would explain the adjustment for the lack of timber rights on comparable 1, and that you derived the adjustment by pairing to comparable 2. End of page. Chapter start. 25%.